In the heart of Chicago, Steve's perfect marriage begins to unravel when his wife, Cora, becomes obsessed with astrology. A mysterious man named Mark enters their lives, and Steve's world starts to crack. Late-night calls, secret meetings, and unexplained absences fuel Steve's growing suspicions. As Cora's behavior becomes increasingly erratic, Steve is haunted by the fear of betrayal. His once loving wife is now distant, wrapped in secrets and lies. When Steve uncovers the shocking truth about Cora's affair, his life spirals into chaos. Desperate and heartbroken, he's forced to confront the reality that his marriage may be beyond saving. How far will Steve go to reclaim his life? "What do you mean? You weren't born in Chicago?" my wife asked, clearly upset. I tried to keep a straight face. "I mean that I wasn't born in Chicago. I was born in Grand Rapids, Michigan." "Why does that matter, Steve?" she replied angrily. "It matters a lot," I said. "It means that the astrology chart I made for you before we got married is incorrect," I added. I knew my wife, Cora, was passionate about astrology, and this seemed to set her off. How could she be so upset over where I was born? Now, she was worried that our compatibility as a couple might be in question. I couldn't understand how someone as smart as Cora could let this astrological stuff affect her so much. I had always seen her interest as a hobby. I mean, who really believes in all that, right? I have my hobbies, like golf, and she has astrology. No big deal. I first met Cora at a party 5 years ago, and I fell for her right away when she smiled at me. She was clever, funny, had a beautiful laugh, and bright blue eyes. Normally, I'm shy around women, but Cora was so popular that I knew I had to act fast, or someone else would take her away. So I asked her out only about 10 minutes after we met. To my surprise, she said yes. From the beginning, we found lots in common. We loved the same movies, songs, and performers, and we enjoyed doing things together, especially photography. That's my job. Cora was stunning and fun to photograph. She loved modeling and had a good eye for what made a great picture. After she learned how to use my camera properly, she became quite good at photography too. I loved the connection we shared. There was just one topic we didn't see eye to eye on: astrology. I remember it was maybe our third or fourth date when she brought it up, and I told her how I felt about it. After that, she only mentioned it occasionally, like when Mercury was in retrograde. But she didn't stop caring about it. She had a whole group of friends who were into astrology. Cora was part of a club that met every Thursday night. The leader, Barbara, taught astrology from her home, explaining what it meant to be born at different times of the year, how that determined zodiac signs, and what traits people had based on those signs and the stars. And of course, you can't forget how to create a person's astrological chart to look at their life journey. You get the idea. Barbara was a nice, middle-aged woman, and probably my wife's best friend. She wasn't teaching anymore, but the club was made up of old students and was mostly a chance for them to meet and chat over some drinks each week. They all had fun, and I didn't mind that at all. Plus, they were always invited to our parties and barbecues. They were kind people, and aside from their interest in planets and stars, I liked them too. Out of respect for my wife, I tried not to embarrass her. When conversations turned to astrology, I just smiled and nodded. After I saw how upset my wife got over a small mistake about where I was born, I understood that I had underestimated how serious she was about this stuff. "Honey, if it was so important, why didn't you ask where I was born before making the chart?" I said. "I just thought, your mom and dad were both born here in Chicago, and they were living here when you were born, so I just naturally thought you were born here too. Well, don't be mad at me. If you had asked, I would have told you. I didn't even know you made my chart before we got married," I said. "Of course I made your chart. I wouldn't have married you if I hadn't," she said a bit sharply. Cora then took some of her astrology books from the shelf, sat at the table, placed a new clean zodiac chart in front of her, and began to look at our future in the stars again. I could see she wasn't ready to cook dinner, so I checked the fridge but didn't see anything I wanted to make. "How about we order pizza for tonight?" I suggested. I realized my frustration was clear in my voice, but she didn't even notice. "Oh yeah, okay," she mumbled without looking up. I waited patiently for over 2 hours for my wife to return to her usual self. She was quiet, and hardly ate. Finally, she lifted her head with a sigh and frowned. "So, what's the decision? Are we going to grow old together or head for a split?" I said jokingly. She shot me a sharp look and replied cheerfully, "I don't know." "I'm just really disappointed," she said. I was surprised by her words. "What? Disappointed about what?" I asked. "Let's just leave it at that, okay? I don't want to talk about it." I was fine with that, at least for now. I was annoyed, and it wasn't the right time to get into a serious talk. I might say things I'd regret later, so I left it alone. She was quiet for the rest of the evening, and so was I. But I had a plan. I know it sounds like a typical guy thing to do, but who cares? They say actions say more than words. I was ready to show her that I was the loving husband I had always been. "What's with the nightgown? I just wanted to wear it tonight," Cora said honestly. "Really? You just felt like it? We've been married for 4 years. This is the first time you've worn something to bed, unless you count our honeymoon." "What's going on, Cora? Is this about that silly astrological chart?" "I don't want to talk about it, Steve. Just let it go," she said, crawling under the covers and turning away from me. "No, I won't let it go. That's what you said before. I agreed because I thought you were just having a bad day. But if it's affecting our life together, we need to talk about it. So what's going on?" She stayed quiet and ignored me. "Cora! You're really starting to bug me. If you think you can lie there and not answer me, you're wrong. You won't sleep a wink until you tell me." She rolled over with a big sigh to show me how annoyed she was. She still wasn't looking at me, just staring at the ceiling. "You're not the person I thought you were. Can we please just drop it?" "No, we can't drop it. What do you mean I'm not the right person? What are you trying to say?" I wasn't going to let a comment like that go without an answer. She hesitated, but soon realized this issue wouldn't disappear unless we talked it out. "Okay, well," she finally said, "the chart says you aren't as honest as I thought. I thought you were really honest, but now I see you're not. You must be kidding. Cora, you've known me for 5 years. Have I ever lied to you? Have I ever done anything to make you think that? Think about it. This is important for both of us. Use your own judgment, not just what the stars say. I'm the same man I've always been. I don't care what that paper says. I love you, and I hope you still love me." I waited for an answer, but nothing came. "Don't tell me you've stopped loving me because of that chart." "No, it's not that. I just need some time to think, that's all. Can you do that for me? Give me some time?" "Okay, but how much time?" "I don't know. I need to think it over for a bit, all right? Think about it and let me know when you're ready. For now, I'll sleep in the spare room," I said, getting out of bed and walking toward the hallway. "I'd rather sleep alone than have you next to me in that nightgown and not be able to hold you." After hitting the pillow a few times to calm down, I heard her crying. At least she still has feelings. I'm not sure how well she slept, but I was fortunate if I got 2 hours of rest. I tossed and turned all night, still shocked that after everything we had been through over the past 5 years, she could say something like that. I felt like I wasn't the man she believed I was. I wasn't the honest man she wanted. As the sun started to peek through the blinds, I opened my eyes wide. Forget it, I thought. I won't sleep now, so I should just get up. I took a shower in the hallway bathroom. Then I went to our bedroom, grabbed some clothes, and returned to the spare room to get dressed. I wasn't sure if Cora was actually asleep or just pretending, but she didn't move while I was there. This was the first time since we got married that I left the house in the morning without kissing Cora. I had gotten up 2 hours early, so I stopped by Denny's for breakfast. I sat there wondering if I could focus on my work. A client was coming to the studio, and I needed to prepare a sample for their ad campaign. I wanted to focus, but I couldn't stop thinking about what happened the night before. My feelings were all over the place. One moment I was angry, then I felt sad. I kept thinking if I could have done anything differently. Maybe I should have given her more space and just backed off. I really don't get women sometimes. I found it hard to believe she truly believed in that astrological nonsense. As expected, work was difficult. I just couldn't think straight. I loved Cora and didn't want to keep arguing, even if it meant I had to make the first move. On my way home, I bought a dozen red roses and an apology card. When I pulled up to the house, I was surprised she wasn't home yet. She usually arrives 10 to 15 minutes before me, and with my stop, I figured it would be around 20 minutes late. I put the flowers in a vase and set them on the foyer table for her to see when she walked in. I leaned the card against the vase. I wanted to see her reaction, so I went upstairs, peeking around the corner as she came in. I watched her open the card with a little smile. She took a moment to read it, then leaned down to smell the flowers. I thought it worked perfectly, but then she casually tossed the card back on the table and walked into the living room. That made things worse. I couldn't tell if my gesture had worked or not. Well, I thought, I have one more trick to try. Let's see what happens. "Hi, sweetie," I said cheerfully as I walked down the stairs, acting like nothing was wrong. I leaned down to kiss her on the lips. She didn't pull away, but she didn't meet me halfway either. This bothered me, but I tried not to show it. I know couples get upset sometimes, but usually it's when one person has made a mistake and I hadn't. I guess that's what frustrated me the most, the unfairness of it all. I kept calm and just kissed her. "Thank you for the flowers. That was really nice," she said, smiling a little. "It's no problem, dear. I also made a reservation at Chez Louis." Her smile grew a bit bigger, but she paused for a moment before saying yes while we were getting ready. She seemed a bit shy, but started to relax during dinner. She felt even more at ease when I took her to the dance floor a couple of times. That smile I loved so much returned, and we began to chat again. "How did the ad shoot go today?" I asked. "It went well," I replied. "It took most of the day and several tries before I found something the client liked." I noticed she came home late and asked, "Is everything okay?" "Yeah, I just had a tough day at work and had to stay late until I finished," she said. I felt relieved to know she had a tough day too. It made me think she was just as worried as I was about what happened the night before. Over the next few months, things were as good as they could be. Cora was still the same kind and loving woman I had fallen for, and she didn't mention my background or my honesty. I knew Cora must have realized it was silly to put so much trust in the stars and came back to reality. I rarely had to leave town for work, but it happened every now and then. "Hi, honey," I said when she answered the phone. I always tried to let her know ahead of time when I would be gone for the evening. "Hi, honey. How was your day?" she asked. "It was great, babe. I just wanted you to know I'm going to Peoria next week. I have a new client who wants to do a photo shoot at the Riverwalk waterfront. I was hoping it could be on the weekend so we could have a little getaway together, but the Riverfront Association only allowed us Wednesday and Thursday. So I will be gone overnight. I'll be back home Thursday night, but probably not before you leave for your astrology club." "Okay, dear. Thanks for letting me know. I don't want to spend all Wednesday evening alone. Maybe I can ask my sister to go out to dinner. Do you mind?" "I don't mind at all. Of course not. Why would I?" "Well, you know, some men don't like their wives going out at night without them." "Darling, I trust you completely. You know that. Besides, how much trouble could you get into with Dodie? She can't keep a secret if her life depended on it." Cora laughed. "Yes, that's my sister. All right, dear. I'll call her and see if she can join me. Will you be home on time tonight?" "Sure. No problem, babe," I assured her before hanging up the phone. I couldn't help but wonder how many couples had a strong marriage like ours. Not many. I was sure of it. That Saturday night, Cora took the first step, and I liked that about her. I had heard from some friends that their wives never took the lead. But Cora was different. She was always the one to start things, and she did so with enthusiasm. One Sunday morning, we had both enjoyed a few drinks and were feeling relaxed. I could always tell when she was sound asleep by the cute little snore that came from her. I was lying on my back, breathing a bit heavily, staring at the ceiling and letting my mind drift. I felt so happy, happier than I ever thought I could be. The only thing that could make me even happier was having a baby. When Cora and I got married, she had just started working at a bank, and I was a young photographer trying to make my mark. We agreed to wait until we were more stable financially before starting a family. I hadn't told Cora yet because I wanted to see how the job in Peoria went first, and I didn't want to raise her hopes until I was sure. If everything went well and the client liked my work, he would quickly become one of my top clients. His company's advertising could almost double my income. I was starting to think that it might be time for us to have a family. I decided to wait until I returned and saw how things turned out. Then, I would sit down with Cora and talk to her about my hopes for having a baby. A big smile spread across my face at the thought. I could hardly wait. During the long drive to Peoria, I let my mind roam free. I wished Cora could join me on this trip. She was amazing when she came along to help out on assignments. Not only could she model for me if I needed, but she was also great at setting up the lights and coming up with new ideas. She was always welcome to be there. But I couldn't help but worry about some silly astrological stuff she believed in. I wondered if I should talk to her about not taking it too seriously. The memories of our arguments about it still echoed in my mind. It was alarming to think how much that nonsense had influenced her feelings. I guessed trying to convince her it was silly might cause more issues. I hoped she wasn't still doubting me and our life together. I thought about whether I should ask her directly or just let it go. If the next couple of days went well and I felt ready to bring up having a baby, I thought I would find out then how she felt. By Thursday at noon, we were finished. Everything had gone well, and we wrapped up 2 hours early. The client was thrilled, and I felt on top of the world driving north, watching Peoria disappear in my rearview mirror. I still needed to stop by the studio to unpack my gear, but I hoped I could get home in time to see my lovely wife before she left for her astrology club. Sadly, I missed her as I drove by my friends Brad and Gail's house. They lived across the street. Brad was one of my closest friends, and he was out in the front yard. I stopped my car to say hello before going home. "Hey, buddy, where have you been? We haven't seen each other in a couple of days," he called out. "Hi, Brad. I had to go down to Peoria. Looks like I missed my beautiful wife," I replied, noticing her car was gone. "Yeah, she left just a few minutes ago, and she looked good. She must have a nice date," he teased. "Yeah, right. She better not," I joked back. "The only date she's allowed is with me." We chatted for a few more minutes until a car came up behind me and honked. I said goodbye to Brad and pulled into my driveway. I was tired from the long drive and all the moving, so I wanted something simple for dinner. I found some frozen turkey steaks to put on the grill, grabbed a can of beer, and was ready to cook. Even though I was tired, it was still early, and since I had nothing else to do, I went into my office to look through the pictures from Peoria. At first, I just wanted to browse, not thinking about editing. But soon I couldn't resist. I started going through each photo, making notes, and picking the best ones for my client. I was so focused that I lost track of time until I heard the front door open. "Hello, beautiful," I greeted my wife with a smile. "Hey, I thought you were already in bed," she replied, giving me a kiss. I checked the nice watch we got as an anniversary gift from her parents and saw it was almost 11. "You're home pretty late, too. Did you have car trouble?" I asked. "No, we just talked a lot about whether Pluto is a planet or not. I didn't realize it was so late. I'm really tired and think I'll head to bed. You don't mind, do you?" she asked, already walking upstairs. "Of course not, honey. Give me a few minutes to finish some notes from Peoria and I'll be right up." "Oh, okay," she said as she continued up the stairs without looking back. "How did it go?" I called after her. "Great," I replied cheerfully. "Good," she answered as she reached the top of the stairs. I felt a little disappointed that she didn't seem more excited, but to be fair, I hadn't told her how important the job was, so it was just another task for her. I went back to my office and finished my notes in about 10 minutes. I felt let down to find Cora already asleep when I finally got to our room. I lay there for a few moments, trying to shake off my disappointment. I was really excited when I got home, but that feeling was quickly fading. I kept telling myself that since I hadn't told Cora how important this assignment was, I shouldn't be upset about her reaction. I tried to calm myself with that thought, but then Brad's comment about how good Cora looked when she left came to mind. Sure, Cora always looks nice, but when she got home, she wasn't dressed up at all. He hadn't seen her in such a long time, which seemed odd. Before I fell asleep the next morning at breakfast, I noticed Cora looked a little worried. "Is something wrong, sweetie?" I asked as I watched her stare off while eating. "Oh no, I'm sorry, sweetie, I was just thinking," she said. "Is there anything you want to talk about?" "No, nothing important, just some stuff at work," she replied. "I just missed you last night. I saw Brad in the yard when I got home. He said, 'I missed you by 5 minutes.'" "I'll need to keep an eye on him," I said. "He said you looked great when you left. He even asked if you had a date. I joked that I expected you to come home in a nice dress. Were you disappointed to see me in pants? Oh, not at all, she replied playfully. I'm just happy when you're home, no matter what. Yeah, but it might feel a bit awkward at the bank, right? She asked with a big smile. Maybe Brad was thinking about Wednesday night. I wore a nice dress and high heels when Dodie and I went out to dinner. You must have come home sooner than you thought, right? How did it go in Peoria? I never got a chance to ask. Honey, it went better than I expected, I said. I'm sure the client is happy with me too. This will be my biggest bill so far, and it will really help our finances. Oh, honey, that's wonderful, she said, finally getting excited. Yeah, I might take that account from one of the big agencies in town. They really messed up their last ad. I'm pretty sure I can get that account, and if I do, we can finally talk about starting a family, I said, watching her reaction closely. Maybe, she said quietly. That response felt a bit underwhelming. We'll have to talk about it another time, honey. I need to go to work, she said, getting up from the table. She walked around me and gave me a quick kiss before leaving. I felt puzzled. I knew she had to go, but I was hoping for a bigger reaction to my suggestion, especially since she had shown so much emotion about having kids in the past. It seemed like waiting for kids was tough for her, but she understood that it was best for us until we could afford it. I told her that we could finally afford it, but her response made me feel uneasy again. I tried to shake it off, thinking I was just being overly worried after our silly argument about where she was born. She seemed lost in her thoughts. Maybe she hadn't really heard me. I imagined that when she came home, she might surprise me, wanting to talk about starting a family right away. That idea made me smile, and I carried that smile all day until I got home in the evening. As I pulled up to our house, I noticed Cora's car in the driveway and expected a warm welcome when I walked in, but I found none. I felt let down when Cora didn't greet me with her usual hug and kiss. Cora, are you home? I called out. Yes, I'm here, she answered from the dining room. As I entered, I saw her surrounded by her astrology books again, open on the table. I leaned in for a kiss, but she only gave me a quick peck on the cheek. Is that all I get? I joked, reminding her of how much I looked forward to our hello. Let me finish this, honey, she replied, sounding slightly annoyed. I didn't like it one bit. I figured she was busy planning the best time to start a family and mapping out potential babies based on birth dates. Meanwhile, I noticed there was no dinner waiting, and I felt a bit out of place. I decided to suggest a change. Hey, let's celebrate my new client and go out to dinner tonight, I said. Okay, but let me finish this first. I'll be done in another 20 minutes, she said, almost disapprovingly. I thought about saying forget it, but I didn't. Instead, I went upstairs to take a shower. By the time she joined me, I was almost fully dressed. Do you have all the baby plans ready? I asked playfully. She completely ignored my comment and headed to the shower. I was eager to start our celebration. The evening turned out pleasantly, even if she still seemed a bit distracted. Thankfully, as the night went on, she paid more attention to me. By the time we cuddled in bed, it was almost 1 o'clock in the morning. So, have you thought more about starting a family? I asked softly. Sure, but I want to wait a couple of months before I stop taking my pills, she replied. I understood that was what she was figuring out when I got home. I wondered how she could be so certain about getting pregnant right away, because I knew some couples took months or even years to conceive. Well, I thought, maybe she knows something I don't. Either way, we had waited this long, so a couple more months didn't matter much. That night, I went to bed with a big smile on my face. My business was doing great. I had a lovely wife who loved me, and we were soon going to be parents. Life felt really good, and I was aware of it most of that week. Every night when I walked through the door, I was so happy. I couldn't help but show my joy. The first thing I did was give my dear wife a big hug and shower her with kisses. I even started flirting with her again, just like when we first began dating. I took every chance I could to be close to her, which made us text each other a lot. Things were nice. But then, on Thursday, Cora came home from her astrology club and her mood changed. I noticed it right away. She was very quiet. I asked if anything was wrong, but she said no. I could tell something was bothering her. She looked a bit different, too. I tried to figure out what had changed, but I couldn't find out. I knew that when I was upset, I liked to be alone. So I decided to give her space, thinking if she wanted to talk, I'd be there. If not, I thought she would handle it herself. The trouble was, she didn't seem like she wanted to deal with it. All week, she kept a distance from me. I wondered if she had changed her mind about having children and didn't want to tell me. I hoped she would eventually open up about what was bothering her so we could talk it through. I tried to be patient, but after 3 weeks of this, I was starting to feel frustrated. Each day, she seemed to pull away more, even when we were close. I thought about confronting her to find out what was wrong. To get ready for that, I sat down at my desk and thought about everything that had happened over the last month, trying to find a clue. I remembered it all started after she came home from Astrology club. I wondered if her friends were worried about something. They were my friends too. Why wouldn't she tell me? The more I thought, the more ideas came to mind. Maybe they talked about having kids and found something in the stars that made her scared. Knowing how I felt about that topic could make her think twice about telling me. Or could it be about our fight over where I was born? I didn't think so. Although she had been upset at first, she seemed to have gotten over it quickly. No, it didn't seem connected to what was happening now. Everything seemed to link back to Barbara's astrology club. For 5 years, I thought that place never caused me any trouble. But now it felt like every time I turned around, it was the source of worry. Since I thought the issue might be related to her astrology club, I decided to talk to Barbara before I spoke to my wife. The next Thursday, I managed to give Cora a quick kiss before she left. Since it takes about 20 minutes to drive from our house to Barbara's, I called her right after Cora pulled out of the driveway. "Hi," she answered. "Hi, Barbara, it's Steve Haynes. How are you?" There was a short pause before she replied, "Oh, Steve, I'm fine. How are you?" "Well, I'm not so sure," I said. "That's why I'm calling. Cora is on her way over, but she just left, so we have a little time to chat. She's been a bit off for the last month or so. She won't talk about it, but I noticed it started after one of the astrology meetings. Do you remember anything that might have upset her? Has she told you anything is wrong?" There was a longer pause this time. "You said she's coming?" "Yes, she's on her way," I answered. "You know she never misses a club meeting." Barbara sighed. "There are other club members coming soon, so I can't talk about it now. You know where I work, right? At the corner of He and Wolf Road, right?" "Yes, of course, but now I'm really getting worried. What's going on?" "I can't explain right now. Can we meet for lunch sometime?" "Sure." I thought about my schedule. "I can't tomorrow. I'll be busy all day. How about Monday?" "I'll have to shift a few things, but I can do that," I said, feeling more anxious. "Sorry, but we have a meeting on Monday. How about Tuesday?" she suggested. "Please don't mention our conversation to Cora, okay?" "Okay. Tuesday works, but that feels like a long time from now. Can you give me a hint about what's happening?" "I really can't talk about it. It's better in person," she replied. "I'll meet you in front of your building at noon on Tuesday. If I can't make it, I'll call. If you don't hear from me, I'll be there." We said our goodbyes and hung up. I felt a little regret for calling. I sat on the couch wondering what could be so serious that Barbara couldn't talk about it over the phone. On top of that, Cora was late getting home again. This time, it wasn't just 30 minutes late, but well past midnight. When I snapped out of my thoughts and looked at my watch, I decided to call her cell, but it went to voicemail. At 2:15, she walked in. "Where have you been?" I said, worried. "I almost called Barbara to see if you were with her." "You didn't call, did you?" she answered, sounding annoyed. "No, but please don't put me in that position. I care about you," I replied. She cut me off. "Don't talk to me like that. I can take care of myself." "You had me worried. It's past midnight," I said as my concern grew. "What am I supposed to think? At the very least, you could have called to let me know you'd be late." This caught her by surprise. I don't think she realized how late it actually was. "I'm sorry." She said she was sorry. Barbara and I began talking after everyone else had gone home, and I must have lost track of time. "Why didn't you call my phone?" "I did, but it was off." "What?" She pulled it from her purse. "I'm sorry. I must have turned it off by mistake. No wonder you were worried." She came over to me, put her arms around my neck, and kissed me. "Will you forgive me?" she asked. How could anyone be upset with someone like that? I nearly forgot the talk with Barbara. "Yes, I forgive you," I said with a smile. "Just don't let it happen again," I added, pretending to be serious. We were both too tired, but if there was any doubt, she put it to rest. "Good night," she said as she got under the covers. Good night, I replied. We hadn't even had time to cuddle before she was already asleep. I lay there wondering what Barbara would say to me. The next few days were hard. I tried to act normal, but all I could think about was my phone call with Barbara on Tuesday. I waited for her outside her workplace, just as I promised. When she saw me, I felt like she wished I wouldn't show up. I asked where she wanted to eat, and to my surprise, she picked the bar and grill across the street. I was shocked because she didn't drink. She chose a quiet table in the corner, away from everyone else. I pulled out a chair for her and sat down across from her. She hadn't said a word or looked at me since we walked in. Barbara had always been cheerful, quick to laugh and kind. But now she seemed lost as she thought about what to say. Her hands trembled, and I noticed tears in her eyes. "Barbara, what's wrong?" "I really hate doing this," she said, looking very upset. "I'm about to lose a very good friend, but I can't help it." She still wouldn't meet my gaze. "What?" "Barbara, who's the friend you're going to lose?" "Cora." Just then, the waitress came to take our order. It was a bad timing, and I had to hold back my frustration. Once she walked away, I turned back to Barbara. "So, Barbara, tell me what's really going on." She sighed as if she was about to share something serious. "Cora called me a couple of months ago, upset that you were born in Michigan and not Chicago like she thought. She said she looked over your information and felt you weren't as honest as she thought. She had a rough time in an earlier relationship, and it hurt her deeply. Honesty matters a lot to Barbara now." I told her, "I never lied to you." I mentioned Steve, but that really upset her. We've spoken about it a few times since. No matter how hard she tries, she can't move past it. It's tough for her since she truly cares about you, but she worries that one day you'll reveal a lie. That thought makes her feel like everything might come crashing down. Just then, the waitress brought my beer and set a lemonade in front of Barbara. "Your food will be ready soon," she said before leaving. I turned to Barbara. "This is crazy. I can't believe Cora is so into astrology. I thought it was just a fun thing." "Oh no," Barbara replied. "She really believes in it. She kept it from you because she knew you wouldn't like it." "But she has faith in the stars?" I repeated in disbelief. "Can't you help her see that she understands it wrong?" Barbara shrugged. "I tried, but she thinks for herself. She's very good at planning and knows what she wants. It's all so confusing." I could feel my worry growing. "Has Cora talked about kids?" I asked. "We spoke about a month ago, and my job was going well. I mentioned wanting a family, but she didn't seem excited. Now I get why." "Yes," Barbara said. "She was hesitant about having kids after looking at your chart. She said she didn't think she could be a single parent." "This is all so strange, Barbara. Is she thinking about leaving?" I asked, louder than I meant to. Barbara's expression changed. She looked worried. "What? Is she really thinking about it?" I felt panic rising. "No, I don't think so, but what? Please tell me what's going on in her mind." "Steve, I'm not sure, but we had a new guy at the club a couple of months ago named Mark Goodson. We all made his chart and compared it with others. Cora's chart matched his perfectly." I felt a knot in my stomach. Was Barbara suggesting that Cora had found someone else? I needed to excuse myself quickly and rushed to the bathroom. Tears filled my eyes before I even reached there. I went into a stall feeling sick. After a few minutes, I couldn't get sick, so I splashed some water on my face and headed back. "Barbara, is Cora going to leave me?" I asked. "Honestly, Steve, I don't know. But the reason for this meeting is that you told me Cora was going to the club." She glanced at me and then looked down. "Steve, I haven't seen Cora for a whole month," she said with a sad look. Then she got straight to the point. "And I haven't seen Mark either." I felt so confused and hurt at that moment. "Are you saying she's not being faithful to me?" "I don't know," she answered quickly and honestly. "But you told me she was coming last night, and she didn't show up. Mark didn't come either. I didn't even notice when the server brought our food." "Enjoy your meal," she said before walking away. I slumped in my seat. I had never felt so low and beaten. I wanted to cry, but I didn't want to do that in front of Barbara and everyone in the bar. "She didn't get home until after midnight last night," Barbara said. "You talked to her and she lost track of time." I said this in a quiet voice, almost like I was in a dream. The woman who just upset me with the truth shook her head. "I'm sorry, Steve, but like I said, I haven't seen Cora in a month." I thought back to Thursday night and realized something had changed. Her hair looked different than when she left. I also remembered that she smelled different, like she had just taken a shower and used a new soap. I hadn't noticed that before, but now it all made sense. "I'm sorry, Barbara. I don't want to leave you like this, but I can't stay. If you see Cora or talk to her, please don't mention our meeting," I said as I stood up quickly and placed $30 on the table. I rushed out and walked to my car across the street. I drove to the back of the office building where no one could see me and cried. I cried harder than I ever had, even as a child. I don't know how long I sat there, but when I ran out of tears, I realized I didn't know what to do. She was the most important person in my life. I would do anything for her. How could she not see that we were real? She and I, not silly horoscope stuff. That was just make-believe. I hit my fist on the car door out of frustration. "I can't lose her," I said to myself. "She's my life. I just can't lose her." I was worn out both in body and mind. My chest rose and fell as I tried to breathe. My heart was racing so much I felt like it might burst. I needed to think. I asked myself what I should do, but it wasn't just a question. I really needed a plan. I couldn't just sit in my car all day. I needed a place where I could be calm, a spot where I could think without distractions. I started the car and drove to my studio. Once inside, I turned off my cell phone and went into my office in the back. I wished I had some strong drinks, but I never kept any there. Instead, I had a coffee pot, so I poured myself a cold cup and put it in the microwave. That's better, I thought. I need to clear my head. I set the hot coffee on the table and collapsed into my chair. I still couldn't believe it. Maybe it wasn't true. Maybe there was a simple reason for it. But if there was, why would she lie to me? I knew I had to figure out if she was cheating on me. If it was true, it should happen on Thursdays, and that wasn't hard to check. But then what would I do? I figured I'd cross that bridge when I came to it. I came up with a plan quickly. It was easy. I called Brad at work and asked if he could meet me for a drink. He sounded surprised. I don't think I had ever called him at work before. I sent a quick text to Cora telling her I'd be about an hour late, and then I met Brad after he finished for the day. As soon as he sat down, he noticed me. "Steve, are you okay? You look upset," he said. I replied, "I think Cora is cheating on me." He stared at me, wide-eyed. "No way! You must be wrong. What made you think that?" I told him about the troubles in our relationship. I explained her interest in astrology and how it affected us. He listened carefully, shaking his head as if he couldn't believe any of it. Then I shared what Barbara had said and how Cora had been dishonest about her Thursday nights. "I can't believe this, Steve," he said, his voice shaky. "How can she follow all that nonsense and not see that you two belong together?" "I don't know, Brad, but she does." "What should I do?" I asked. "First, I need to know if it's true. I need to find out if she's cheating on me or not. After that, I'm not sure," I admitted, trying to stay calm. "I don't want to lose her, Brad. I love her." "I know, buddy," he replied softly. I looked down, wiping away my tears. "Can you help me follow her on Thursday night?" "Sure," he said. "I'll stay behind you. She might notice my car, but she probably won't recognize yours. We'll keep in touch to avoid losing track of each other." Brad looked a bit worried. "What will you do if you find out she is cheating? Are you planning something?" "You mean like confronting the guy?" "Yeah, I might. But I know that wouldn't solve anything. It would probably just land me in trouble," I replied. "Okay," he said, seeming a bit relieved. "I'll be watching for her. As soon as she leaves, I'll jump in my car and follow." "And I'll stay behind you," I added. I recalled something clever I had seen in a movie before. It was a good idea then, but I never thought I'd actually use it. "What was it?" Brad asked. "I'm planning to make it so that when she drives away, it will be dark enough for her to turn on her headlights. I'm going to break the red light cover of her car. This way, it will be easier to follow her. I also have some reflectors in my garage that I will attach to her trunk. If she sees them, will she know something is wrong? I doubt she will notice. I'll do it right before I leave. She won't have a reason to check the car before she gets inside." "All right. I think I have everything figured out. I know she didn't tell the truth, but I can't believe she would cheat on you. Maybe it's something innocent. Brad, you don't know how much I worry. You're right." We finished our drinks and went home. Cora was on the phone when I walked in, but quickly ended the call. "Hi, honey," I said, giving her a quick kiss. "Who were you talking to?" I asked. "Oh, just one of the new people from work," she replied. I looked at my watch. The bank has been closed for over an hour. I know, but he had a question and couldn't wait until tomorrow, she said. You let them call you at home? You should tell them it's our time. If they have questions, they need to ask at work, I said firmly. I didn't believe she was talking to someone from work. I suspected it had something to do with that Mark guy. I didn't say anything, but I couldn't hide my anger. Cora didn't respond. She just turned to check on the roast in the oven. Dinner will be ready in a few minutes. Why don't you wash the dishes? She said flatly. I got up, trying to figure out how to deal with everything over the next few days without showing how I really felt. I felt like I was slowly falling apart. I hoped I was wrong about my fears, but everything was pointing to my worries being true. For the next few days, Cora was quiet. Normally, I would try to cheer her up, but this time I stayed quiet too. On Thursday, I stopped by the hardware store before going to a photo shoot. I had a few things to pick up. When I got home, I parked my car on the street and then pulled into the driveway. I knew Cora would be in the kitchen and wouldn't see me, but she would hear the car. I walked over to her car and tapped the red plastic cover of the tail light with a small hammer I had bought. I didn't break the light, but I cracked the cover enough to see the light inside. Then I grabbed the reflectors from my garage and attached them to the trunk. I stepped back a little to admire my work. It would be easy to follow her tonight. As I turned to head back to my car, I noticed Brad watching me from the window. He gave me a thumbs up. At dinner, things were quiet again. Later, just before Cora left for her astrology club, she kissed me. I wondered if that would be the last kiss she ever gave me. I watched her drive away from our driveway. When I turned back, I saw Brad already waiting in his car for her. He let her go down the street a little, then pulled out to follow her. I walked to my car as he drove off. My phone rang just as I started the engine. Are you there, Steve? Yeah, I'm here. I'm one car behind you, I replied as I left. Do you have it? He asked. Oh yeah, thanks to what you did to her taillights. I knew I couldn't lose her, even if I wanted to. My stomach tightened when I saw them turn in front of me. Well, that rules out Barbara's place, I said into the phone. Brad sounded confused. Barbara's place? Where's she supposed to be going? That's in the other direction. Oh, he said with a hint of sadness. We didn't have to go far to find her. The Brightside Motel was only 10 minutes from our house. Brad and I watched as Cora parked and walked straight to room 114. Brad drove into the motel but went around the back so no one would see his car. I followed him. I'm sorry, Steve, he said as we got out of our cars. Thanks, I replied, hardly able to speak. There were no more questions. People didn't meet in motel rooms to do anything simple. Yet even with all the signs, I still had hope. I opened my trunk and pulled out a 10-pound sledgehammer I had bought earlier. Wow, said Brad, surprised when he saw it. What are you going to do with that? Don't worry, it's not for them, I reassured him. You ever watch cop shows? They always use a big battering ram to break down doors. Well, I don't have that, but this will work. Can't we just ask the clerk for a key? He asked. He won't give us one. Don't worry, I'll pay for the door, I said, pulling my camera out of my bag and handing him the Nikon. I've set it up. Just press this button and take as many pictures as you can. If Cora wants a divorce, at least I'll have proof that I wasn't the bad guy. Okay, Brad said, taking the camera. We should give them a few more minutes before we go in. We stood by the cars in silence for another 10 minutes, then started our walk to room 114. Ready? I whispered. Brad nodded. When the door opens, follow me and start taking pictures. Got it, he whispered back. I took a spot next to the door for a good swing and, with a motion like a lumberjack, I hit the door behind the doorknob with the heavy hammer. With a loud crack, the metal door swung open and splinters flew everywhere. The security chain broke and the top of the door fell partially into the room. I ran into the room and heard Cora scream. What I saw made everything clear. Until that moment, I had been trying to figure out how to fix my marriage. I wanted to save the woman I loved, but now I knew I didn't have a marriage anymore. I was going to leave Cora. I couldn't handle the sadness of what I discovered. Cora's face showed fear. I could tell she saw my pain. My sadness quickly turned into anger. It took over my whole body. I felt all my muscles tighten. I took a deep breath to calm down. That makes sense, right, Cora? I said coldly. If we are to believe the stars. My honesty was now in doubt. Cora was so worried about me lying to her, yet it was her who lied to me, hiding things behind my back. She betrayed me and broke our vows. I saw her hands shake. Tears filled her eyes and fell down her red cheeks. It looked like she was finally grasping the seriousness of her actions and what she had lost. Rage filled my eyes as I looked at the man who had taken my wife. He sat on the floor, breathless, with the sheet still wrapped around him. I turned to Cora. "I see you're wearing your wedding ring. So, this guy knew you were married. Great honesty, right, Steve?" I said, as Brad looked confused, not knowing what to do. "Don't worry, I'm not going to hurt anyone," I said to Cora as I took her hand. She looked confused and tried to pull away, but I held on tightly. She was shocked when I took the wedding rings off her finger. I clenched them in my fist, my anger boiling. I must have looked wild as I turned and walked towards the door. "Where are you going, Steve? Where are my rings?" Cora cried out. "Wait, please! Go find out!" I shouted back. I stepped outside and tossed the rings onto the sidewalk. A small crowd gathered, curious about what was happening. They watched as I gathered up all my anger for one strong swing. "Steve, no!" I heard Cora shout as I lifted a hammer above my head and brought it down hard. The rings shattered, sending pieces of gold and bits of stone flying. I did not know where the diamonds had gone. Cora fell to the ground in sorrow. My rings, she gasped. "Now they're broken, just like my heart. Both will never be the same," I shouted. I was filled with pain and wanted her to feel some of it too. "I don't understand, Cora. How could you hurt me like this? I loved you more than anything, and you destroyed that love, just like I destroyed your rings." "I never thought you could be so cruel," I said to Brad. "Let's leave them alone." At that moment, a young motel manager with a few pimples popped out from around the corner of the building. He stopped when he saw me holding a sledgehammer. He stared at the door that was hanging by just one hinge. His eyes showed fear. "Don't worry," I told him. "I won't hurt anyone." I took a business card out of my wallet and handed it to him. "Here, just send me the bill for the door and sidewalk." Cora was still standing by the doorway, covering her face with her hands and crying. She seemed lost in her pain, ignoring the growing crowd of people watching. I thought she might be in shock. When Brad and I got back to our cars, I took the camera from him and tossed the sledgehammer into the back seat. "Are you going to be okay? Why don't you come home with me? Just don't go back to the house right now." "Thanks. I really appreciate the offer, but I need to be alone." "I think that's exactly what you don't need right now, Steve. You've just been through something really hard. You need people around you, people who care. Come on, come home with me." I knew he worried I might hurt myself. Truth is, that thought had crossed my mind, but I really wanted to be alone. "Thanks, Brad, but no. I'll stay at the studio for a few days." I could see the concern on his face as I got into the car. I'd never felt so down before, and I didn't want anyone around me. I had just accepted the fact that I would live the rest of my life without the woman I loved, and I needed time to feel sad about it. As I drove out of the parking lot, I took one last look at Cora, the woman who had once made me so happy. At one point, her boyfriend tried to help her up, but she was pushing his hands away and shouting at him. I couldn't hear her words. I imagined she and her boyfriend would be happy together, and I said to myself sarcastically as I opened the door of my studio and stepped inside. Everything seemed different now. The lights, the cameras, the racks, and all the equipment, the same things I'd used for years but now felt unimportant. What was it all for? Yes, I loved my job and was lucky to have it, but it was all meant to build a life for us. Cora, me, and our future children. But now, there was no family, only me. Was it still worth the effort? Was it still worth dealing with the ups and downs of owning my own business? I turned around and left again. I locked the door and started walking. I had no direction. I just needed to think. It was time to rethink my life. As I walked, it felt like I was passing an endless row of streetlights casting my shadow on the sidewalk. By the time my legs were so tired I could barely move, I found myself facing the dark, restless waters of Lake Michigan. How I got there, I had no idea. I was quite far from the studio, probably about 5 or 6 miles away. I reached into my pocket to check the time on my phone, but I remembered I had left it on the car seat. The calming sound of the waves echoed in my mind as I climbed over some small rocks to a big boulder. I crouched down to take a break. Looking around, I tried to figure out where I was. I guessed it was about an hour or two in the morning. At least I was using my time well, I thought. During my walk, I made a plan for my future, and it didn't involve Cora or any other women, just me. I decided I could only rely on myself. I promised never to give my heart away like that again. For the last 5 years, I had been building a business I was proud of. I often wondered if it was worth it. I concluded it was. This business would be my focus, my only focus. I would commit myself fully to it. I wanted to create the best photography studio in Chicago. That was the plan. By the time I returned to my car, it was starting to get light outside. The first thing I did was grab my phone from the car. My voicemail was full. I was surprised by how many people were trying to reach me. Brad, Cora, her mom and dad, her sister Dodie, and Cora's friend from the bank were calling me. I decided to keep Brad's messages. I would call him back as soon as I knew he was awake. I didn't want to talk to the others. Part of my plan was to distance myself from Cora, her friends, her sister, and even her family. No matter how much I cared for them, I didn't want reminders of what I had lost. At the back of the studio, I had a small room I used as a changing area for the models. It had a closet, a makeup table, a couch, and a shower. I planned to replace the couch with a futon. I would divide the closet for my clothes, and the room would become my bedroom. In the study, I had a stove and a small fridge. It was all the comforts of home. I looked at my schedule and saw that I only had one photo shoot, which was at the studio at 3 in the afternoon. I set the alarm on my phone for 8 o'clock, just 3 hours away, and lay down on the couch. I didn't even remember closing my eyes before I fell asleep. The next thing I knew, my phone was ringing. Had it really been 8 o'clock already? I thought, reaching for it. No, it was only 7 o'clock. It wasn't the alarm that was ringing. It was the phone. "Hello?" I mumbled, trying to catch some more sleep. "Steve, are you okay? Where have you been? Gail and I have been worried sick about you." I recognized Brad's voice. "Steve, don't ever disappear like that again," his wife Gail said in a worried tone. "Good morning, Brad." "Good morning, Gail," I replied, feeling a bit embarrassed. I heard someone let out a sigh, but I couldn't tell if it was Brad or his partner. "Brad, I'm fine. I promise I won't hurt myself. I just took a long walk last night and left my phone in the car. That's all. I'm sorry if I worried you." There was a brief silence. I think they were just relieved to hear from me. Then, Gail spoke up. "Steve, you really scared us!" The first person Cora called was Dodie. She went to the studio, thinking that's where I would be since I didn't show up. Dodie called the house and asked if my car was parked outside. I had told Brad I was going to the studio, so when Dodie said I wasn't there, everyone got anxious. "I'm really sorry. I did go to the studio but left soon after." When I got back, the sun was starting to come up. "You've already talked to Cora," I said. "She probably called here 20 times. I don't think she believed us when we told her I wasn't staying here." Gail sighed. "So now she just needs to look out the window and see my car is missing. I don't think she has come home yet." "Steve," Brad interrupted, "she probably stayed with that other guy." I replied with anger. "No way. I doubt that she is with him. She was upset and asked us to call her if we heard from you." "Well, I haven't spoken to her, and I don't plan to. As soon as it hits 9 o'clock, I'm going to call my lawyer and start the divorce process." "I don't want anything to do with her or her silly friends," I added. "Steve, can't you just talk to her, please? She seems really sad. You might still have a chance. Maybe you could go to counseling together," Gail urged. "Gail, you're not getting it. I don't want anything to do with her," I said firmly. "She left me for someone else. It's all so ridiculous." "Yeah, I know," Brad said, "but I believe she still cares about you. What if you gave her another chance?" I cut her off. "Gail, there won't be a second chance. It's over between us. I can't handle going through that again. From now on, I'm just Stephen Haynes, a photographer, nothing else. Not a husband or a father, just a photographer." "Oh, Steve, don't do this to yourself. You're a great person. Don't close your heart." "I'm sorry, Gail, but it's already closed. My only love now is my studio," I said coldly. During my talk with Brad and Gail, my phone beeped, telling me I had another call waiting. I ignored all of them. After we hung up, I turned off the phone, took a shower, and walked 4 blocks to Denny's for breakfast. By the time I got back, it was around 9 o'clock. I needed to get moving. Lou was the lawyer who helped me set up my business a few years ago. I called him first and explained what was going on. He said he would take care of my divorce and give me tips about money. The problem was that our personal bank account and my business account were at the bank where my wife worked. I didn't want to go there and run into Cora. Lou suggested I avoid the main bank where she worked and instead pick a branch a little farther away. I looked online and found one that was 45 minutes away. Lou warned me that if Cora contested the divorce, the court might freeze our accounts. He advised me to take out enough cash just in case. Cora and I had one credit card together, which I paid off and canceled before going to the bank again, as Lou suggested. I planned to take out only about 40% of the money from our joint accounts so that I wouldn't upset the court. I would also close my business account and move it to a different bank. She couldn't access that account anyway, but I didn't like the idea of it being at her bank. I also had a business credit card I could use if I needed to. I remembered going to holiday parties and other gatherings with Cora hosted by the bank. When I walked into the branch, I half expected to see someone I knew, but luckily I didn't. I waited for the man in front of me to finish his business, then went to the window and told the teller I wanted to cash a check. I handed her my check and asked to close my business account. She looked at the name on the check, excused herself, and hurried to the branch manager's office. I saw him make a quick phone call and then return with the teller. "Hello, Mr. Haynes," he said, shaking my hand. "I'm Mr. Peterson, the branch manager. I can assist you in my office if that's okay." The teller left us, walking through his office and out the other side of the teller area. She smiled at me in a shy way as I followed Mr. Peterson into his office and took a seat across from him at his desk. "Why do we have to come in here, Mr. Peterson? Is there a problem?" I asked. I worried that Cora had already said something and that the main bank had called to warn her I was here. "No, Mr. Haynes," he said with an awkward smile. "It's just that when someone wants to close a big account like yours, it's my job to try to keep them here." "Can I offer you anything? Coffee?" he asked. "No, thank you," I replied, shaking my head. It seemed to me this was just a way to waste time. "If this is going to take a while, I will need to come back. I have meetings this afternoon, and I don't think this should take all day." No, Mr. Haynes, let's just get your account sorted out," he said, moving his mouse on the computer. "Okay, let's see," he said, looking at the screen seriously. After 2 or 3 minutes of him staring at the monitor without saying anything, I spoke up. "It seems like you've been warned about my situation with my wife. I really think you called her to tell her I was here. Let me be clear. I don't want to talk to her. If you think you can keep me here for 45 minutes until she arrives, you're wrong." He let out a sigh and leaned back in his chair. "I'm sorry, Mr. Haynes, but the request to hold you came from the vice president himself. I'm sure he has told all the branch managers. So wherever you go, you'll face the same treatment." I sighed again. "Look, Mr. Peterson, I don't want to get you in trouble, but I will either handle this quickly or I'll file a complaint. You can tell the vice president that I mean it and I will go through with it." "Yes, sir," he said, looking down. "We will set it up." He didn't rush, but in 35 minutes I was out of there with $3,000 in cash and a cashier's check for my closed business account. I was almost across the small lobby when I heard her call, "Steve, wait!" I looked up to see Cora coming toward us from a side door. Wow, I thought, how did she get here so fast? She must have broken every speed limit. Please, Steve, talk to me," she begged. She looked so worn out that I almost felt sorry for her. I was sure she had slept even less than I had. I thought about avoiding her, but that felt weak. I needed to pull myself together and talk to her. "Okay, Cora, let's talk, but not here. Let's go to a restaurant or someplace for coffee," I suggested. "There's a place right around the corner," Mr. Peterson said, smiling as he walked out of the office, knowing he had done his job. We walked over and sat in a small booth in the corner, ordering coffee. "Steve, I don't even know how to start saying I'm sorry," she began. "I can't believe I betrayed you like this. I feel so ashamed. I still love you, Steve." I hadn't said a word yet, but she kept talking as if she couldn't stop. She was gripping her napkin tightly. "Steve, everything you said in that motel room about me lying and cheating was right. I'm really sorry. You were a good husband and you didn't deserve that. I don't know why I couldn't stop myself. I couldn't help but jump in. It's because you believe more in silly stars than in me, I said. I've never felt so much pain, both emotionally and physically. I thought I was going to collapse in that motel room, Cora. I truly did. Her eyes filled with tears. Yeah, I guess I didn't see how much I hurt you until you broke my rings and told me I had broken your heart, she said. I'm so sorry, Steve. I messed up everything. She picked up a napkin and wiped her eyes. But Steve, I don't think it would have worked out between us. I know you think what I believe in is silly, and that's part of the problem. When I found out you were born in Michigan, I went back and looked at your details again. I realized I made a mistake. Mark and I are better for each other. Come on, Cora. We've had 5. Great. I paused, then went on. No, not just great, but amazing 5 amazing years together. You won't find anyone better matched for me than him. We could make a happy life together, start a family, and grow old together. Your belief in astrology ruined that. I just can't believe it. What a loss, I said, looking down and shaking my head. Steve, I know you feel that way right now, but you will find someone to do all these things with, someone who is right for you. You're a great guy. I know there's someone out there for you. Oh, Cora, just stop, I said, tired of hearing her talk. It's over between us. Let's just leave it like that. I don't want to hear you talk about anyone else. I don't plan on seeing anyone. I'm going to focus all my time and effort on the studio now. I don't want a wife or family anymore. I don't want kids, and I really don't want my heart broken again. Oh, Steve, please don't do that. Don't shut yourself off. You're a wonderful man, and you'll be a great father one day. That's enough, I said. You wanted to talk, and we talked. If you have nothing else to say, I need to go. Okay, she said, nodding and still wiping her tears. No matter what you think, I still love you. I can't just turn that off. I'm so sorry for how I acted and what I did. I hope you find someone nice. Please don't let my mistakes keep you from loving someone else and starting a family. Yeah, okay, I said, standing up from the table. We said our goodbyes. I paid the bill and we went our separate ways. I was glad she caught me. Our talk gave me some peace. Earlier, I had judged Gail's suggestion about counseling harshly, but I realized she might have a point. After crying and acting out at the motel, I thought maybe Cora was trying to reach me because she wanted to save our marriage. Maybe she wanted to say she didn't believe in astrology anymore. Maybe she still saw me as the man she married. But that didn't really matter. There was no need for counseling. Divorce was the only way forward. Now, after talking to Cora, I felt a little better. My path was clear, and there was no changing my mind. On Tuesday of next week, I would file the papers, and by Friday, she would be served with them at her parents' house where she was staying. I moved on from that part of my life by sitting down and making a new plan for the studio. It was a plan for the next 90 days and then for 5 years ahead. I spent all weekend working on it. When I finished, I cried. Cora was very kind, and our divorce went smoothly. We sold the house, but we didn't make much money from it, so neither of us got a lot. We both found new apartments. Hers was close to our old house. Mine was 6 blocks from the studio, just like I wanted. I threw myself into my work. Sometimes I wondered why I bothered paying rent since I only used the apartment for sleeping, and sometimes I didn't even do that. I worked day and night and didn't think much about seeing people. Everything was okay until the holidays came. I was invited to a couple of Christmas parties, but I didn't want to go. My parents were off celebrating their anniversary on a cruise in the Caribbean. As long as I kept busy, I was fine. But during Christmas, I had nothing to do. I tried to avoid friends, but rumors still found their way to me. The latest was that Cora had moved in with that guy Mark on Christmas Day. Sitting alone in my office at the studio, I cried like I hadn't in months. I told myself it was silly. She was gone, I should move on. But I couldn't help it. It was the holidays, and I felt more alone than ever. A week later, my friends Brad and Gail said if I didn't show up at their New Year's Eve party, they would stop talking to me. I used to love going to parties when I had Cora with me, but now just thinking about going made me feel uneasy. Since the divorce, I had hardly talked to any women except for a few models and a waitress. I didn't have anyone to take to the party, and I knew I would feel awkward there. I told Brad it wasn't personal. I just didn't want to be at a party where everyone would be in couples and I would be alone. But Brad and Gail wouldn't take no for an answer. So I went. The party started at 9. I quietly walked in around 10. I looked around and thought about leaving again, but I had promised I would come. I moved to the bar in the corner where Brad was mixing drinks. "Hey, you finally made it!" he shouted when he saw me. "Got a beer with my name on it?" I asked, smiling. "Sure, I saved one just for you," he replied. Just then I felt a gentle hand on my arm and turned to see Gail. "Hey, Steve! I thought you weren't coming. I was worried we'd have to take you out of the will," she said, giggling at her joke. I leaned over and gave her a quick kiss on the cheek. "You didn't leave me a choice," I replied. "I don't know how long I'll stay. I appreciate what you're trying to do, but I feel out of place. I'm just not ready to socialize yet. Get ready because I want you to meet someone," Gail said as she pulled my arm. "Oh no," I replied. "Really, Gail? I'm not ready to meet anyone. Please don't try to set me up. Listen, I know this girl from the fitness club. Her name is Megan Biondi, and she's very nice. I'm sure she is, Gail. But I just don't want to meet anyone now. I invited her over because she has no place to go for New Year's Eve. Her boyfriend left last summer for a new job, and she hasn't been with anyone since. Gail, I know. Can you just let me speak for a moment?" "I'm sorry," she said, "but she wouldn't come unless I told her you'd be here. She knows your work and thinks you're a great photographer." "Come on, Gail, you must be joking. How would she know my work? I'm not famous at all." "She works at Alan's agency," Gail explained. "That's one of my best clients. She's in their design department and sees your work often. She heard you were at the office a few months ago and wanted to meet you, but by the time she got there, you had left. Why doesn't she just come to the studio if she wants to meet me so badly? I'm there all the time. I think she's too shy to just walk in like that. In fact, she's a little nervous today." "Come on, Steve," she said, pulling my hand again. I recalled how my mom used to set me up on blind dates with her friends' daughters when I was younger. I quickly learned that when someone said she's a very nice person, it usually meant I should run away as fast as possible. That memory came to me as Gail led me through the crowd of partygoers to meet Megan. Suddenly, the noise around me faded, and I felt lost in a room full of people. My eyes landed on a lovely woman chatting with a couple of others in the corner. "You said her name was Biondi." "She looks Asian," I said to Gail. "Her mother is Japanese and her father was Italian," Gail replied. "He passed away in a car accident when Megan was a teenager. Her mother is still alive, living somewhere in New England. Now give me a smile," she said, guiding me over to the striking woman. "Megan," Gail called out as we walked closer, "I want you to meet someone. This is Steve Haynes." I noticed her hand shaking a bit as she reached out. "It's a pleasure to meet you." Gail wasn't exaggerating. She really did seem nervous, and it was quite sweet. "Steve, please," I said, shaking her hand gently. "I understand you work for Alan's advertising agency." "Yes, I do a lot of work for them," she replied with a warm smile. "I really like your work. I was thinking about asking you to take some photos for my boyfriend a while ago. It was meant to be a goodbye gift. At first, I thought of you, but I just couldn't do it. I would have felt too awkward. Right before he left, we had a big argument, so we didn't say goodbye on good terms. Now, I'm glad I didn't take the things he offered. She was really nice. I started to feel like maybe there was someone else who could be as special as Cora, and perhaps I had found her." We found a quiet spot in the living room and began to chat. She seemed a bit shy at first, but as we talked, she started to relax. We were getting along well when she asked, "So, what's your sign?" I told her I was a Virgo. That hit me hard, like a reminder of my past pain. I didn't want to be rude, but I just couldn't stay any longer. Megan looked surprised when I said sorry and walked out the door without a proper goodbye. By the time I reached my car, it felt hard to breathe. When New Year's Eve came, I was in the back of my studio drinking too much. I'm pretty sure I passed out before midnight. The next day, I was still in my chair when my phone rang, waking me up. "Steve Haynes, what is going on with you?" It was Gail, sounding very upset. My head was pounding, my body hurt from sleeping in a strange position, and my best friend's wife was angry with me. What a start to the new year. "You made that girl cry. What happened?" she asked. "I've never seen you act so rude. Something must be wrong." "She's a virgin," I said, cutting her off. There was a moment of silence. "What?" she replied. I repeated, "She's a virgin. I liked her a lot, Gail." But then she started talking about astrology. I can't be around anyone interested in that stuff. "I wouldn't." I said it firmly. After a short pause, Gail spoke again. "Steve, I don't think she really cares about astrology. She never mentioned it to me. She only asked about your sign in our short talk. I'm sorry, Gail, I didn't want to upset her, but when someone brings up that stuff, it drives me crazy. I can't deal with it, and I don't want to be around anyone who enjoys it. Gail sighed. I get that, but I'm sorry. She's a really nice girl, and I thought you two would click. I hoped she could help you take a break from the studio. Gail, I know you meant well. I believe Megan is nice, and I'm sorry I hurt her feelings. I truly am. But please, no more matchmaking for now. I just don't have the time for it. Okay, Steve. I'm sorry things didn't work out. I know. Please do me a favor. When you see Megan again, tell her I'm really sorry. I shouldn't have left her like that, but I just couldn't help it. I will, Steve replied. When? I asked. At least when we hung up, we were still friends. But I felt upset again just thinking about it. I also felt bad for Megan. I definitely didn't want to make her cry. I needed to get myself together. The shower at my apartment was much better than the one at the studio, so I decided to go home, shower, and then head to Denny's for a meal. Thank goodness Denny's is open on holidays. As I sat there enjoying what turned out to be a late lunch, I remembered the night before. Even though things hadn't gone well with Megan, it had felt nice to be out with a woman again. After finishing my coffee, I decided that I would start dating again. Not too often, maybe 2 or 3 times a month. That should be enough to have some fun since it had been a while. The first chance to get back into dating came the following week. Erica Snell was a local model I had worked with many times. She had so many wigs, makeup styles, and different looks. She was smart, funny, and really nice, too. We worked all day on an ad campaign for a big candy company in town. By the time we finished, it was almost 5 o'clock. I felt a bit nervous. I hadn't asked a woman out in years, but if I approached it the right way, it wouldn't feel like a date. It would just be a nice gesture to treat a hard-working friend to dinner. So what do you think? She asked, when she stepped out of the dressing room in casual clothes and light makeup. Am I going to be on billboards? Magazine ads? Yes. They said they liked the photos of you. I even heard the ad director mention a commercial. Really? She said with a hint of worry. Are you going to be in a commercial? No. It will be one of the big names in town. I can't afford that, I explained. She started to gather her things to leave. Hey, Erica, it's 5 o'clock. Let me buy you dinner to say thanks for your hard work. She paused and looked at me. I could see her hesitation. Finally, she smiled and said yes. Well, I'm really hungry. There was a little Italian place just 3 blocks away. I had never been there before. Denny's was a couple of blocks further, but I wanted to take her somewhere new. It turned out to be a nice restaurant. They had a good wine selection, tasty food, and a relaxed vibe. We talked mostly about the different photos we took that day and which ones might be used. After about an hour, I felt ready to take the next step. Erica, I wanted to ask if you have a boyfriend. If not, I'd love to take you out. Maybe we could go to a show or have dinner and dance a little. She looked at me oddly, as if she was waiting for me to say more, so I stopped speaking. What happens if I don't go out with you? Will you stop working with me? She asked, sounding a bit suspicious. Her question caught me off guard. I knew that some photographers can be really pushy with their models, making them think they have to please them to keep getting work. But it bothered me that she thought I was like that. Let's just forget I asked you, I said shortly. And don't worry, you're a great model and I'll keep hiring you like before. Did I upset you? I'm sorry, Steve. I just get offers like yours all the time and it costs me a lot of jobs. I should have known you weren't one of those guys. I'm sorry. Apology accepted, I said. I appreciate it, Steve. You're really nice, but I don't want to mix business with personal stuff. It's fine when things are good, but when they go bad, it could hurt everything. I made that mistake once early in my career. I broke up with him after 6 months and he told every photographer and agency about it. It nearly ruined my career. Erica, I'd never do that, I said, feeling a bit offended. I know you wouldn't, Steve, but I see it as a tricky situation. She was a smart woman, and she was right. I realized I needed to think about dating someone outside of work. You're right, I nodded. But I still hope to take you out to celebrate if you get this commercial. She smiled. You got it, Steve. If I get that job, I'll treat you to dinner. I knew she was just saying that to be nice after turning me down, but it felt good to hear. For the next week, I didn't think about dating. The holidays were over, and I was busy with work again. It was about 1 a.m., and I was still editing footage in my studio when I decided I needed a break. I leaned back in my chair and thought about how nice it had been to hang out with Megan. Until she mentioned she was a Virgo, that is. Still, I needed someone to relax with, maybe go on a date or two. I remembered my talk with Erica and knew I should avoid dating the models I was working with, so who could I ask out and where would we go? I didn't like the idea of a bar. Places like that rarely worked out for me. While I was thinking, my stomach growled. I realized I hadn't eaten dinner. Denny's is open 24/7. I figured I'd wrap up my work for the day, get some food, and then head home to sleep. As I walked into the restaurant, I was surprised to see Karen. She usually worked during lunch hours. I went over to the counter. "Karen, you're here pretty late. Did you forget to go home?" She laughed softly. "Speaking of staying late, are you still working?" "Yeah, well, not really. I'll head home after I eat." "What about you? Why are you still here?" "My son broke his arm a couple of months ago. Even with insurance, the hospital bill was more than $1,000. I asked Bill, the manager, if I could work more hours. I hoped he would let me work lunch and dinner, but instead he gave me the night shift." "Well, I guess I can't complain too much. Isn't that what they say?" she replied with a smile. I was surprised to find out she had a son old enough to break his arm. I never looked closely at Karen before. She was a nice-looking woman. I guess she was around 21 or 22. "How old is your son?" I asked. "He'll be 7 in April," she answered. "If he stays out of trouble, he thinks he'll be a stuntman one day. He has no fear at all." I laughed. "You might need to get him a special suit like the astronauts wear." "Yeah," she smiled. "What about you, Steve?" "Well," I said, looking at the menu since breakfast was coming up soon. "How about some steak and eggs? Sounds good," she said, turning to put in my order. Then she picked up the coffee pot and started checking on the other late-night customers. I wondered why I had never noticed Karen before, except to give her my order. She was really attractive, a young woman dealing with money issues and raising a boy. I bet she wouldn't mind going out for a nice dinner and some fun, I thought. Just then, she returned with my food. "Hey, Karen, when you get a chance, can you come see me? I have a question for you." "This is a good time," she said, resting her chin on her hand and leaning on the counter. "Go ahead," she encouraged with a smile. "I was wondering if you'd like to take a break from work and worries for a bit and join me for dinner and some dancing." She paused for a few seconds, looking me in the eye. "How long has it been since your divorce?" she asked. Her question surprised me. I kind of expected her to be excited. "Well, we separated a little over a year ago and the divorce was final 7 months back. I really appreciate your offer, Steve. But after dating a few recently divorced guys, I've realized something. They all seem to have a lot of personal issues they carry for a while." I guess I looked a bit shocked, but she went on. "Look at you. I used to see you here a lot at dinner time, and now it's 1 o'clock in the morning. Why is that? Because you throw yourself into your work. It's the only way you cope. When I date someone, I hope for a real relationship. I want someone who has their life together. That's not you right now, Steve." "But I am stable," I said quickly. "I'm good at my job. I have a growing business. But what about all those feelings still swirling in your mind? Grief, anger, pain. You're already thinking about starting a new relationship. I doubt you're ready for that. All those strong feelings you went through are still here, and it's going to take time for them to go away. When you're ready to enjoy life and laugh again, Steve, come and talk to me. Then I would be happy to go out with you. I have my own emotional struggles right now, and I can't take on yours, too." She leaned over the counter and gave me a gentle kiss on the lips. After that, she smiled and went to fill the ketchup bottles. I was shocked. Was I really that messed up? Maybe I was. I thought about it all the way home. I couldn't sleep that night. I kept thinking about what Karen said. Maybe I shouldn't even think about dating yet. I felt like I couldn't get anyone to go out with me anyway. By the next day, I had pretty much given up on dating, but I still had other feelings to deal with. I had to find a way to feel better. A prostitute? I just couldn't imagine paying for that. Plus, it could be dangerous. No prostitutes for me. But maybe I should try going to a lively bar one night and see if I could meet someone. That felt like the best idea for me at the moment. The following Friday night, I decided to take a chance and went to a place called Foxtail. It was said to be one of the best bars to meet people. The place was packed with mostly guys, but there were plenty of women around too. I was surprised to find an empty bar stool and sat down. I ordered a drink and started looking around. I felt really out of place. It's strange how lonely you can feel in a room full of people. I thought about finishing my drink and leaving. Just as I was about to take one last sip, the bartender told me someone was watching me. I looked over and saw a pretty woman looking in my direction. I smiled at her. She smiled back. I was trying to figure out what to do next when she walked over to me. "You're the photographer, aren't you?" she asked. I was taken aback. "Yes, I am a photographer, but I'm sorry. Do I know you?" I usually remember faces, but I didn't recognize her at all. I knew she had never modeled for me. "Not really," she said, reaching out her hand for a shake. "My name is Jeanette. My ex-husband is Wally Sims. You worked with him before. I saw you a few times when you met him at one of his houses, but I stayed in the car. I don't think you even knew I was there." Now I understood who she was. Her ex was in real estate. When I first started my business, I used to take pictures of the homes he was selling. It didn't pay much, but back then I took any job I could find. I remember that sometimes there was a woman in his car when he picked me up at the house, but I was never introduced to her. "How do you do?" I said, shaking her hand. "It's nice to finally meet you." "Me too," she replied with a smile. Just then, the guy next to me left. I quickly moved my hand to make space for her. She sat down and asked if I still worked for her ex. I told her no, that I hadn't done that kind of work in 3 or 4 years. We seemed to talk easily for a full hour, and she never mentioned astrology, which I was glad about. I asked her out, and she said yes. The next evening, I drove up to her house feeling nervous. I wondered if she wanted the same thing for the night as I did, which was to get closer. She seemed like a nice person, and I thought she looked good, but I didn't feel any real spark. I knew it wouldn't turn into a big romance for us, but maybe a relaxed friendship. That was fine with me. She kissed me on the cheek when I arrived at her door, and we went out for a nice dinner and some dancing. "So, Steve, if I'm not being too nosy, what happened with your wife?" she asked during dinner. "It's a long story, but mostly she believed in astrology more than in real life," I replied. She smiled. "I wish my breakup was that easy to explain. I still don't know why Wally wanted a divorce. He said we just grew apart. I think he was running away from me, but I couldn't prove it. That's why I sometimes sat in the car. I wanted to see if he was with someone else. He always claimed he wasn't cheating, but I knew he was lying. Honestly, I think a lot of men cheat. You probably had some models around when you were married, right?" I was shocked. "Of course not," I said, feeling offended. "Liar! Men are all the same," she said, and I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Where was this coming from? She hadn't acted this way the night before. Hey, I interrupted. I felt my frustration rise as I spoke. "Let's forget about our exes and just enjoy tonight." She looked a little embarrassed. "Oh, I'm sorry, you're right. I just get worked up sometimes." The whole dinner felt tense, and I started to think about ending the night and not asking her to dance. But then I thought maybe she was just nervous. I would stick it out and see if things improved. When we got to the club, it was very crowded. I looked around and noticed there were at least 2 men for every woman. I felt grateful that I already had someone to dance with. We couldn't find an open table, but there were spots along the walls where people could set their drinks while watching the dance floor. We picked a spot, and just moments later, a friendly bartender came over to take our order. She told us that if we put our glasses on a napkin, she would know we were dancing and wouldn't take our drinks when we stepped away. But if we set our drinks directly on the bar, it meant we were leaving for good. We waited for our drinks so we wouldn't lose our place. Then I asked her to dance. My family used to be great at the jitterbug. I wasn't as skilled as they were, but I knew enough moves to manage. I was happy when she stayed with me. After we enjoyed a quick dance, we moved to a slow song and then went back to our drinks. After her long talk at dinner, I felt shy about starting a conversation, but it was necessary. She had said the night before that she worked as a manager in a sports store, but we hadn't discussed it further. So I asked her, "Jeanette, as a manager, what do you do there?" "Mostly, I try to keep my boss happy," she replied. I worried that I had opened a topic she didn't want to discuss. Just then, a guy approached, and I thought he would help me. "Hi, Jeanette. I've never seen you here before," he said to her. "Hello, Tom," she answered, then quickly introduced us. "Tom, this is Steve. Nice to meet you." I said politely, but he barely acknowledged me and turned his focus back to Jeanette. Would you like to dance? He asked her. Sure, she said, not even looking back at me. She left me standing there and walked onto the dance floor. If I had cared a bit more, I would have stopped this, but I had already decided that this was my only date with Jeanette. I had given up on the idea of her being my girlfriend. I stood there sipping my drink while they danced together a few times without stopping. I finished my drink, took a napkin from under the bottle, and walked over to them. Jeanette, I'm leaving. Let him take you home, I said. What? No, wait, she exclaimed, surprised by what I said. Tom grabbed my arm. What did you call me? He challenged, trying to seem tough. I turned to him and stared straight into his eyes. If you want to keep using that hand, let go, I said firmly. He seemed to think better of it and let go. Steve, wait. I'm sorry. We were just talking, Jeanette said, trying to make amends. I didn't reply. I just turned and walked to my car. Dating was really frustrating. As I drove home Sunday morning, I still felt angry. Instead of going the 8 blocks to Denny's for breakfast, I decided to take a walk to clear my head. I hoped I might see Karen, but her shift hadn't started yet. I needed to get back to the studio. I didn't have any filming planned, but I had a lot of editing to do since I walked both Friday and Saturday nights. When I walked into the office, I saw my phone blinking with a new message. Guess who it was from? Steve. I'm really sorry about last night before you picked me up. I called Wally to tell him about our date. I thought it would make him jealous, but he just said, "You're a great guy," and wished us fun. I felt so frustrated with him. That's what caused all the arguing at dinner. Then I was embarrassed about what I said, so when Tom showed up, it felt like a break. I just needed to stop thinking about you for a moment. Tom can be a real jerk, and I meant to be with you again after that dance. I think I waited too long. Tom doesn't know where I live, and I wanted to keep it that way. So after you left, I took a cab home. I feel really bad about how I treated you, so I'm sorry. I understand if you don't want to go out with me again. Goodbye, Steve. I felt relieved that she understood because I had no plans to ask her out again. After the divorce, she had even more troubles than I did. I remembered Karen's words, "I have enough problems of my own, let alone yours." Now I knew exactly what she meant. So, for the next month, I threw myself into work. It was the only part of my life that felt right. One night, I was looking through my books while I tried to sleep, but I couldn't rest at all. The next morning, I woke up with my head on my desk. That's when I seriously thought about hiring an assistant. I had put it off since I started my business. All the taxes and rules were overwhelming for a small business like mine, but I could afford help, and I needed it. I was getting ready to place an ad in the paper when the phone rang. "Stephen Haynes Photography?" I answered. "Hi, Steve, it's Gail." "Hey, how are you?" I asked, a bit out of breath. Usually her calls meant an invitation to something. "Steve, do you know Barbara Sheffield? She ran the Astrology Club." I wondered why Gail was asking about Barbara since they had only met a few times. Then it dawned on me. "Did something happen to her?" I asked. "She died of a stroke," Gail replied. "I'm sorry. I know you liked her no matter what. Her obituary is in today's paper. The stroke happened last Friday, but they didn't find her until Saturday. She was taken to the hospital, but she never woke up and died on Sunday. It took me a moment to process this. She was only in her early 50s. That felt too young to go like that." "Yeah, she was a really nice person," I said. "Barbara was the only one from Cora's group of friends I still talk to." "Do you know where they will bury her?" "Yes, at Schuster's," she replied. "But if you go to the wake, you'll probably see Cora," Gail warned. "That's okay," I said. "Barbara was a good friend, even if Cora had known her longer. She told me the truth when I found out Cora was not being faithful. After I asked for a divorce, Barbara called to say she was sorry. I think she felt bad for telling me. I told her I was grateful for her honesty and understood how tough it must have been. We kept in touch occasionally after that. She always avoided talking about Cora in front of me, which I appreciated. "I need to pay my respects," I said. I thought it would be better to go when the doors opened on the first day so I could avoid the crowd. It worked for a few minutes. When I walked in, I didn't see anyone familiar. I thought they were family. I went over to the casket and looked down. It was hard to recognize her, but that often happens. I felt bad that I hadn't spoken to her since our lunch. I leaned over a little and quietly thanked her for being a true friend. As I turned to leave, I saw 2 members from the Astrology Club come in. "Steve," Margaret said, surprised. "Steve Blackie," he said, reaching out his hand. "Hey, guys," I replied as I shook Blackie's hand and gave Margaret a quick kiss on the cheek. I was shocked to hear about Barbara. Was she sick, or did she mention anything? "Nothing," Blackie answered. "We were all at the club meeting the night before, and she seemed fine." I shook my head, confused. "Has anyone seen Cora yet?" "They were close, so she must be having a tough time," I said. They exchanged looks. "Cora was kind of pushed out of the club after we found out about her and Mark," Margaret explained. "They didn't get kicked out, but when they came back, no one spoke to them, so they stopped coming." I didn't say anything, but I felt relieved. Cora loved that club, and it must have hurt her when everyone turned against her. "I need to go," I said, wanting to leave before bumping into anyone from the club. "I'm sorry, but I have a shoot. I can't change it, so I need to leave." I could tell they didn't believe me, but they were polite enough to act like they did. "Steve, don't be a stranger. People ask about you from time to time. Let us know how you're doing," Margaret said, returning my kiss on the cheek. "I will," I replied, feeling anxious. I really wanted to avoid running into Cora if I could. I shook his hand again and went to the door. I was just leaving the parking lot when I saw Cora pull up to the house. I was a bit surprised to see she was by herself. "Where's that perfect boyfriend of yours?" I thought to myself. I noticed her eyes get big when she saw me, and it seemed like she wanted me to stop. So I just kept going and got out of there. On my way to the studio, I remembered what Karen, the waitress at Denny's, had said about all the feelings inside me. She was right. Even after a year, seeing Cora again made me feel all the anger and frustration come back. I told myself to stop letting it bother me. I reminded myself that living well was the best revenge. I needed to focus on that. After I got back to the studio, it became my whole life again. A month went by, and I found myself editing work at 2 in the morning. I need an assistant, I told myself. I'd forgotten about that. Tomorrow, I would write an ad and post it. I really needed help. So, I did. I placed an ad in the paper and online, and the next day, I had 6 interviews lined up. After the first 4, I was almost ready to give up. I didn't expect them to know much about my job. I could teach them, but they had to be willing to learn. Half of the people who came couldn't even fill out a job application. I had just shown the last applicant out and was heading back to my office, thinking grumpily about how much time I had wasted. Suddenly, I heard the door open. I turned and saw Megan standing there, looking surprised. I had to admit she looked lovely. "Megan, what a nice surprise. I'm glad you're here." "I want to apologize," she said. "Send Mr. Haynes, please," she added. "I'm the one who should apologize. I'm really sorry for what I asked. Is there somewhere I can sit down? I'm a little nervous." "Sure. Follow me," I said, leading her through the studio to my office. "Here," I said, pointing to a chair. "Have a seat. Would you like a cup of coffee? I just made some." "Yes, please," she replied. She sat down and took a sip before speaking again. "Mr. Haynes," she started, but I interrupted her. "My name is Steve, remember?" "Okay, Steve," she said with a smile. "Now please stop interrupting me, or I'll never be able to say what I came here to say." "Go ahead," I said, sitting down across from her. "Steve, when I first saw your work years ago, I thought you were very talented. Over the years, you've produced some of the best pieces I've seen, and I'm not the only one who thinks so." I was about to say something humble, but she gave me a look that made it clear I should let her finish. I just smiled and stayed quiet. "I've also heard others you've worked with say what a great guy you are. I've wanted to meet you for a long time, but I haven't had the chance. I knew you were married and I was engaged, so I didn't expect anything to happen between us. I had a few daydreams, but I understood they were just that. Dreams. I thought I had a chance when she took another sip of her coffee. "Megan, Please, Steve, let me finish," she said. I fell quiet as she went on. "I've known Gail for years. We do workouts together at the gym. She understood that my fiancé left me and invited me to her New Year's Eve party. At first I said no, but then she mentioned a really nice guy who had just gotten divorced. When she said your name, I was shocked. I could hardly believe it. I told her I had wanted to meet you for a while, so I said yes to the party. But then I started to get worried. By the time I arrived, I was a little overwhelmed. A few shots of vodka helped me feel better. When you got there, I was much more relaxed. She took another sip of coffee and continued. When we started talking, I was still nervous, but then our conversation went well until there was a small pause. Remember when I asked about your zodiac sign? I knew right away that it must have looked bad on my face. Steve, I didn't know what had happened with you and your wife. I know nothing about astrology at all. I only asked because guys usually want to know my sign, and it just popped into my head. Honestly, I don't even know my sign. I often say I'm a Virgo because they are supposed to be organized, or so I've been told. I quickly realized I said something wrong, and I started to cry. That's when Gail came in, took me upstairs, and helped me settle down in the guest room. It wasn't until the next day, when she and Brad explained what had happened with you and your wife, that I understood how my words must have hurt you. I wanted to say sorry, but I felt awkward and maybe a little scared. It wasn't until I saw the job ad in the newspaper yesterday that I finally found the courage to come here. I interrupted. You mean for a job? She nodded. Yes, I wanted to apply, but I needed to say sorry first. I was silent for a moment, stunned. Actually, I owe you an apology, I said. She started to respond, but I raised my hand. Now it's my turn to talk. I'm really sorry for leaving you at the party. It was very rude of me. You don't know what happened with Cora and me, and I shouldn't have reacted that way. I'm truly sorry. I took a breath before continuing. I would love to have someone with your skills here, but I can't pay you what you're used to making. A small smile appeared on her face. How much do you think a designer makes at Allen's? No, wait, she said quickly. Maybe I should check how much you are going to pay before I say anything. Honestly, I wasn't planning to pay much more than the basic rate, but I didn't expect to meet someone as skilled as you. I thought about how much I could pay if I found someone I could really depend on. There was no reason to argue over the price. I would pay top dollar for someone like her. It would be worth it just to have her nearby. I said, Megan, I wish I could pay more, but the best I can do is $500 a week. She replied quietly, Okay, I agree. Really? I asked, sounding more like a happy kid than a business owner. Yes, she said, but I need to give Alan a couple weeks' notice first. Is that okay? Yeah, sure, I answered. Then I stood up and shook her hand. Welcome to Stephen Haynes Photography. I gave her a tour of the studio. From her focus and the questions she asked, I knew she would be a great help. I had her fill out an application and some insurance forms. Just as she was leaving, a client walked in. She smiled wide when I introduced her as my new assistant. The next day, she called me. Hi, Steve. Can I still call you Steve, or should I go back to Mr. Haynes since you are my boss now? Hi, Megan. If I hear you call me Mr. Haynes, I might just take away your paycheck, I joked. She laughed. Okay, Steve, I'm just checking in. I wanted to let you know that Allen's is going to make me work for 2 weeks. I was hoping they would let me go after I told them, but no luck. Oh, I expected them to keep you around for as long as they could, Megan. I wouldn't be surprised if they offered you more money to stay. I felt a little worried after I said that. Oh no, I thought. Would they try to bring her back? They already did, she replied. I told them no thanks. Over the next couple of weeks, Megan came by the studio in the evenings to help me out. I felt so lucky to have her on my team. The first day she came in, she was ready to work. By noon, we had done more in a few hours than I could do all day on my own. Megan, it's my tradition to buy lunch for everyone on their first day. Everyone? How many have you hired? A surprised Megan asked. You are the first, but everyone has to start somewhere. I smiled. I put up the closed for lunch sign, locked the door, and took her to Denny's, my favorite lunch place. We found a booth and sat down. Hey, Steve, you brought a guest today? She said with a grin. You know that means good tips, right? Hi, Karen. This is Megan. She just started as my new assistant. Karen looked surprised. Your assistant? Really? She asked, glancing at Megan. Megan smiled and nodded. Yes, she said proudly. Thank you, Megan. Now maybe Mr. Haynes will have more help. The workaholic won't have to come in at 1 o'clock in the morning anymore. Not if I can help it, Megan said, looking at me. We had a nice chat over lunch. She told me about how she fell in love with photography in college and was excited to go on shoots with me to see how I worked. Just as we were finishing up, Megan excused herself to the restroom and Karen brought me the check. Looks like I missed something. Yeah, she said as I went through my cash. Missed what? You. You asked me out and I was silly enough to turn you down. I can be really foolish sometimes. Karen, I don't know what you mean. Do you want to go on a date? Is your offer still open? Don't be silly. I don't think she would like it. Who wouldn't like it? Megan, of course. This girl has feelings for you. Don't tell me you haven't seen that yet. Karen, we don't really know each other. Besides, she works for me. It wouldn't be right to date her. She just smiled. We'll see. She said that as the two girls passed each other when Karen left. They talked a little, but I couldn't hear them. Megan came back to the table with a smile. That night, I closed the studio early for the first time in a year and went home before 6. I wasn't sure what to do when I got home. By the end of the first month, I wondered how I ever worked without Megan. She learned quickly and already knew most of my lighting tricks. She edited my work well, and she was great to be around. A few times, I caught myself imagining just having fun with her, but since she was my partner now, I decided that was not a good idea. As Erica told me, it would not be smart to mix work with feelings. If we hit it off and then broke up, I could lose her as my assistant, and I couldn't risk that. Steve, Jim Roper called the other day. He wants you to call him back as soon as you can, Megan said when I got back from running errands. I quickly picked up the phone and called him back. Jim was in charge of advertising Chilltown Candy, my biggest client. Hey Jim, it's Steve. I just got back and Megan told me to call you, I said. By the way, who's Megan? Since when do you have an assistant? He asked. Since a couple of months ago, I replied. Things got busy, so I had to hire someone. Does she look as good as she sounds on the phone? Jim joked, using a word like delicious when talking about a woman. I played along, saying, Megan is great. She looked at me when I said that, but I thought she didn't understand the joke. You're going to take her with you to Peoria, right? Jim said. I didn't know I was going to Peoria, Jim. When is that? I asked. That's what I wanted to discuss with you. We're running a campaign to follow up on those commercials you did for us on the Riverwalk. This time we're doing it right. We are going to make a series of commercials and need 3 different models. Do we have enough time for all of this? I asked. Last time, the Riverfront Association didn't give us much time. Steve, he said, they got so much free publicity from our ads that this time will be different. We can use the whole place for as long as we want. I think we'll need about 3 days, maybe 4 at the most. Let me know when you can do it. I need to plan everything as soon as possible. Okay, Jim. I'll check my schedule and get back to you later today. Do you have any models, or should I find some? I have one, he replied. Her name is Jessica, and she's from Los Angeles. The boss saw her picture and wanted her for this. The other 2 I'll leave to you. All right, I said. Let me work on this and get back to you before the end of the day. I said goodbye and ended the call. What was that about? Megan asked. It sounds exciting. Exciting? Not exactly. Peoria isn't what I would call thrilling, but it will be fun. Let's check the schedule. We need to find a place for 4 full days. I also need to call Erica Snell and Jean Mathers to see if they can join us as models. Megan and I got busy, and by 4 p.m. I had called Jim back with the schedule and everything was ready. Jessica would come in from LA and everyone else would meet at Denny's for an early breakfast before heading to Peoria in a convoy of 5 cars. Megan rode with me while Erica and Jean shared a car, and Jim and the rest of the advertising team made up the rest of the group. When we checked into the motel, we were told that Jessica had already arrived. We found her by the pool, where she looked great in a stylish swimsuit. It was clear why Jim's boss wanted her. She really stood out. Jim sent one of his team to look for good spots by the riverfront, while the rest of us talked about what we would film. Megan, who had experience with set design, shared a few ideas that both Jim and I liked. We started shooting just after noon, and we had a very productive day. Later, we all went out to eat and then returned to the motel, eager to get some rest. The next day was going to be busy. We would be filming from morning until night, and I was just drifting off to sleep when I heard a light knock at the door. It was Megan. She stood there with a big smile. "Hi, Steve," she said. "Can I come in?" "Sure," I replied, opening the door for her. She paused for a moment before speaking. "Steve, I really hope I'm not putting my job at risk. Please don't fire me. I know I shouldn't do this, but I can't help it. I've waited as long as I can, she said, stepping closer. We fell onto the bed, feeling tired. Later, she whispered softly, I love you, Stephen Haynes. I knew it even before I met you. I felt it the moment I saw your work. I understood that I was taking a chance. I had known her for a much longer time than she had known me. But on our first day at the restaurant, Karen had told me to express my feelings for her, or I might lose her. I lay there trying to understand Megan's words. She loved me. But did I love her? I promised myself I would never give my heart away again. I didn't want to feel the pain like I did when I was with Cora. All I thought I needed was a friend, not anything more. Was I ready for something deeper? My heart was racing. It felt like it might stop. Please say something, Steve, please, Megan urged. I smiled at her. Megan, you're not in trouble. You haven't ruined anything. I thought about that for a moment and grinned. That's not completely true, is it? We both laughed a little, but I needed some time to think. When Cora and I were together, she was everything to me. So when we ended things, it hurt so much. I promised I would never experience that pain again. I wouldn't let myself fall in love like that again. But I had to admit, ever since Megan entered my life, I had been wrestling with these feelings. When she wasn't around, I missed her. At night, I thought about her. I dreamed of waking up beside her each morning. Honestly, I wasn't sure I could love her as deeply as I loved Cora. I wondered if I would ever feel that way again. But I also knew I didn't want to lose her. I wanted her in my life, Megan. Could you agree to that? Just for now? She smiled back at me. So we drifted off to sleep. Hey, are you two up yet? Hurry up. It'll be daylight soon, Jim called, waking us up. It seems our secret is out, Megan said, looking a bit worried. How did he find out? I joked. After last night, I bet the whole motel knows. We had been quite noisy. Megan felt embarrassed, but then smiled, remembering I had called her cute. Yes, I did, didn't I? Half an hour later, we all gathered for breakfast and then headed to the river for another long day of filming. Megan was an amazing assistant, offering many good ideas, most of which we quickly accepted for that night and the next. She once again stayed by my side the morning we were to leave. I woke up and saw her smiling in her sleep. If I was honest, I had to compare the last 3 days to some of the happiest days of my life, even compared to my time with Cora. Did that mean I was falling in love even though I had promised myself not to? Was I really putting my heart at risk again? I could only say one thing. Yes, as frightening as it was, I had fallen in love again. Is something bothering you, Steve? Megan asked about an hour after we got home. You've been really quiet. Nothing's wrong, Megan. I've just been thinking a lot, doing some soul searching. Do you wish we hadn't spent that time together? I know you're still sad about Cora. I wouldn't have had the courage to talk to you like I did. But after what Karen said, my fear of losing you was stronger than my fear of sharing my feelings. I'm sorry, Steve. I didn't mean to rush you into anything, but that's the thing, Megan. I want this more than anything. After Cora and I ended things, I promised myself I wouldn't let that happen again, and for a while I kept to that promise. I spent the last year and a half trying to convince myself that I didn't need anyone. I told myself that my studio was my only passion, and for a bit, I believed it. Then you came into my life and showed me how wrong I was. You made me see how lonely that kind of life can be. You opened my heart again, and I began to feel things I thought I had forgotten. I still have a lot of feelings to sort out, but I know that one of them is love. Love for you. I said, Steve, I looked at her. She was very emotional and tears were rolling down her cheeks. Are you okay? I asked. Yes, she nodded slowly, reaching into her purse for a tissue. It feels like a dream come true. I've wanted this for so long, but I never thought it would happen. She wiped her eyes. I love you with all my heart. When we returned to Chicago, we talked and agreed to take things slow. We hadn't really gotten to know each other yet. So, that's how we decided to start. A couple of days later, Jim came by the studio to see what we had from the shoot. Where's Megan? He asked after looking around and not seeing her. She had to leave for work, I said. You're a lucky guy, Steve. She's amazing, smart, and beautiful. I would have done anything to find someone like her. There was a hint of longing in his voice. I thought you were happy being single. I am fine, really. It's just that when I see a couple like you and Megan, well, I guess I feel a little envious. I know that could lead to trouble. What do you think about kids? I asked him. Are you joking? I love kids. I had a great dad and always wanted to be like him, but you have to have kids to be a father. What about someone else's child? Can you be a good dad if the woman has a child already? He looked at me with curiosity. What are you getting at, Jim? Have you eaten lunch yet? No, why? Because there's a waitress at Denny's where we had breakfast before we left for Peoria. Her name is Karen. She's beautiful and smart. Plus, she has a 7-year-old son. Come on, let's grab lunch. I'll introduce you, and then you can take it from there. By the time we left, they were chatting like old friends. They started going out together and even hung out a few times with Megan and me. A few months passed, and I realized I had truly given my heart to Megan. I just hoped she would take better care of it than Cora did. If you've never seen Chicago in the fall, you're missing something special. The leaves change into bright orange, yellow, and red. They sway gently in the cool breeze under a clear blue sky. The weather is great for wearing cozy sweats, and the evenings are perfect for snuggling with someone special. Megan and I were walking along the lake shore. We stopped on some big rocks and watched the moon's bright glow dance on the Blackwater Bridge. She said something as the breeze came in from the lake. I wrapped my arms around her and pulled her close. It had been a little over 2 years since I found Cora with Mark and decided to be alone. I had already broken that promise to myself. It was time to make it official. Megan, I want to thank you. For what, honey? For healing my heart. Just 2 years ago, I thought it would never be whole again. But you've shown it how to love again. I will always be grateful for that. Oh, that's so sweet. She stopped speaking as I slid off the rock and knelt down. Oh my God, Steve, you didn't. She covered her mouth and squealed. Megan Biondi, I said, pulling a ring out of my pocket. Will you marry me? She was speechless. She held out her left hand and nodded, tears streaming down her face. I placed the ring on her finger just before she jumped off the rock and hugged me. She kissed me a few times and then rested her head on my chest. She still couldn't find the words. We set a date for the following May. It was unseasonably warm in early March. Megan and I were in a back office going through our latest project when I heard someone come in the front door. I'll see who it is, honey, I said, getting up to check. At first, I thought I was dreaming. Cora, I said, surprised. Hi, Steve, she replied softly. How are you? She looked good. Her blonde hair was just as silky as I remembered, and her blue eyes sparkled like the sea. I'm doing fine, Cora. How about you? I asked, trying to keep things light. She managed a weak smile. Oh, not too well. I came to apologize for what I did to you, to us. You were right all along. Life is what we make of it, not what the stars say. I didn't understand that the last time we spoke in the restaurant. I told you I was sorry for my mistake and for lying about it. I felt so ashamed when you found out. She looked down, fighting tears. I never meant to hurt you. But I still thought Mark was meant for me, not you. Oh, how could a girl ever be wrong? So you don't believe in astrology anymore? No, I don't believe in it now, Steve. The stars said Barbara would live a long life, but she passed away at 57. The stars said you couldn't be trusted. And I was the one who got hurt. The stars said Mark was my perfect match, but he ended up trying to sell me to his friends. Now he's in jail for drugs. Can you believe he thought I would help him out? Mark was such a mess. When I think about what I lost, well, no, Steve. Astrology is nonsense, just like you always said. I just wish you had told me that before I messed up our marriage. I tried, Cora. I begged you to listen. I know you tried, she said quietly. She glanced at my left hand. I see you haven't put your ring back on yet. Is it too late to start over, Steve? At that moment, Megan came out from another room and hugged me. I knew she had heard our talk and wanted to join in. Honey, Oh, I'm so sorry, she said politely. I didn't know you were talking to someone until just now. There was a hopeful look on Megan's face. This is Cora, my ex-wife. Cora, meet Megan. She's my fiancée, and we're getting married next month, I told her, trying not to gloat. Cora, Megan said, reaching out her hand. It's really nice to meet you. I felt a bit sad when I saw a desperate look in Cora's eyes. They shook hands, and Cora kindly offered us her best wishes. Well, you too, she said with tears in her eyes. I just came by to say hello. I hope you will both be very happy together. Megan, treat him well. He's a great guy, she said, and quickly turned to leave. I watched as she hurried past the window, wiping away tears. Are you okay? My future wife asked. Yes, honey, I'm fine, I replied. She doesn't believe in astrology anymore. Maybe this will help her move on and find someone new. I hope so. On my wedding day, I thought I'd be nervous, but I wasn't. It felt right. Gail was the matron of honor, and Brad was my best man. My family was there, and Megan's mom came too. She seemed like a more mature version of her daughter. Jim, Karen, and their son Daniel were in the crowd, and I knew they would be next. In the months before the wedding, Megan kept me on my toes. She asked me not to get myself an engagement ring. I didn't know why, and she wouldn't tell me. She said I would find out on the wedding day. Surprisingly, my tuxedo buttons stayed together. When I saw my bride walking down the aisle, she looked like the most beautiful bride I had ever seen. The priest started the ceremony, and we both shared our vows. Then it was time for the rings. For the second time in my life, I proudly said, "With this ring, I am married," and slipped it onto her finger. Megan took my left hand. My father was the best man I ever knew. She spoke loudly so everyone could hear. I was his princess, and he was my king. He left us when I was just 16. The only thing my mom had from him was his wedding ring. She wanted me to give it to you on the happiest day of my life. We both know he would have wanted that. I am wearing this ring as I get married, she said, tears in her eyes. I now pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss the bride. A few months later, Jim and Karen also got married. Daniel was Jim's best man. Megan and Steve kept working together, and Steve's studio grew a lot. In just 3 years, it had 5 employees. This was good because Megan was pregnant with their second child, and Steve needed the help. Every little girl should have a baby brother, and Lindsay Haynes was about to get one. It was a sunny Sunday afternoon, a great day for shopping at the mall. A very pregnant Megan walked next to her husband, who was pushing Lindsay in a stroller. They smiled, chatted, and laughed as they picked clothes for their new baby. They didn't see Cora as they passed by the food court, but she saw them. Cora watched the happy parents walk by. They looked so joyful together that she remembered the sweet talks they had when they were married. Back then, it made her so happy she thought her heart might burst. Now, those memories just felt sad and foolish. Cora wiped away her tears, but more came. "Oh God, how could I have been so blind?" she whispered to herself. They had been in several stores already, and she could only see their backs. She wondered if she would ever be this happy again, or if she would find someone she could love like Steve. Would life give her another chance? Did she even deserve a second chance? Tears streamed down her face as she pulled a tissue from her bag. One thing she was certain of was that if she found another man, a man she could love and who would love her back, she would not let him slip away. She would be the best wife and mother ever. But what were the chances? Thanks for listening to One Infidelity Hit. If you liked what you heard, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and drop us a like.